Hey, this is Cory Boldroff, the real estate guy, bringing you another monthly market update. This month is for August 2022, giving you real stats and facts and opinions of experts so that you can be informed and make the best educated decision with your real estate transactions. As always, if you like this, please like, subscribe, maybe share this with someone that might find it beneficial. So with no further ado, let's get into it. So today we're going to cover what's going on in the current market, why experts are saying we are not coming into a crash, and the third thing, where are we headed? So what's happening in the current housing market? Well, as we all know, this year has really been defined by the rising interest rates. So when we cover weekly mortgage rates, they continue to fluctuate. So as you can see, in the beginning of the year, we were at 3.22. And just so everyone knows, when we hit 2.68% over the last 2 years, that was the lowest interest rate for a 30-year fix that we've ever had in the history of our country. So yes, they were phenomenal rates, but they were also unicorn years, and they really drove that demand. So we started at 3.22, and we had one of the highest, fastest rate spikes we've had in this country since 1981. So we went from 3.22 and we climbed all the way up, even hitting over 6% in some areas of the country. We kind of peaked out around June, where we were kind of left in speculation whether it was the peak or not. But since then, we have seen rates starting to climb back down. And I know a couple of buyers were actually quoted in the low fours to mid fours. And one of my buyers even got quoted 3.75 in this last 2.5 weeks. So it really just depends on what day you're going, because it has been roller coaster, but we have seen a slight decline over the last couple of weeks. So what we do know is during recessions, historically, when recessions hit from the peak to the lull, we have seen rates decline. So I'm not going to get in the debate whether we're in a recession or not, because it's become something political and I'm just not into that stuff right now. But I will say the National Bureau of Economic Research defines recession as a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale and retail sales. Historically, anytime that we've seen the real GDP come down 2 consecutive quarters, we have called it a recession, starting from 1949 all the way to the present, where now we're speculating. But for the most part, whether we're in a recession or not, we have now declined real GDP 2 consecutive quarters in a row. So is there a recession around the corner? These are the percentage of economists surveyed who believe we will see a recession in the next 12 months. So from July 21 to today, about 50% of economists are saying that we are coming into a recession, and they can last anywhere from 6, 18, I think 42 months. It's the longest recession we've seen in this country. So how would housing be impacted by a recession? What I can show you, and which I'll show you in the next chart, in the last 4 out of 6 recessions, we've actually had an increase in home prices. So a recession does not equal a crash. Here's to show you 1980. And if you've seen these before, you know I shared this chart quite often in my market updates. 1980, we saw a 6.1% increase. 1981, we saw a 3.5% increase. 1991, we saw a small decline of 1.9%. 2001, an increase of 6.6%. Now, 2008, that was a housing mortgage crisis that actually caused the recession. The housing market what caused a lot of it, made a lot of people fall into foreclosure, short sales, distress sales, and it was a much different time than what we are in today. And we'll go into that a little bit later. Come into 2020, when we did hit that little lull because of the pandemic, which was, obviously a outside influence Victor, we actually saw a 6% increase, and there were a lot of speculation that said we were going to come into this crash during the pandemic. There was going to be a flood of foreclosures. Everyone was going to lose their houses. And actually what we saw was 2 unicorn years where we had the highest appreciation rate in a very, very long time, 2 years consecutively. And yes, a lot of that was driven by the crazy low interest rates. So again, when people say, oh, rates are rising, oh, rates are so high, Actually, the 40-year average on a 30-year fix is 8.1%. Historically, anything in the 4 to 5% is considered very low interest rates. We're just comparing it to the last 2 years, and we have short-term memory. So a recession means falling mortgage rates. What we have seen in every single recession, historically, now this doesn't mean that we have the crystal ball or it's a must, but over the last 6 recessions, we saw interest rates drop from peak to trough, anywhere from 0.5% all the way to 5%. So what we can predict is possibly from the peak of the recession to the trough, we are going to start seeing interest rates start coming back down, because generally that's what kind of sparks and spikes the real estate market. This is again looking at mortgage rates and recessions, and you can see every single time during those 6 recessions, we actually saw the mortgage rates drop, and pretty quickly. Usually within a 3 to 6 month period, we saw those rates drop. So what I can say this means to buyers is you might not want to wait, because if we do see that spike go back down and those rates drop 1%, 2%, we will see a huge increase in demand, and that overbidding, overpricing might end up happening. So again, you marry the house, you date the rate. Get a house now before we start seeing that increase in prices and start coming back down, then you refinance. From the Fortune magazine, over the past 5 recessions, mortgage rates have fallen an average of 1.8 percentage points from the peak seen during the recession to the trough. And in many cases, they continue to fall after the fact, as it takes some time to run things or turn things around when the recession is technically over. So let's go over why the experts are saying the housing market will not crash. Now, a crash, so everyone knows the definition of a crash, is a 25% decrease in prices year over year. So a house that sold last August would have to sell 25% lower this August for it to technically be a crash. For it to be considered a correction, it would be at least 10% year over year. We have not seen housing prices come down to last year's rate yet. Okay, what we can see is over the last 2 years, what really drove the market was supply and demand. We had an undersupply of standing inventory and a huge increase in demand due to historically low interest rates, and that is what caused that frenzy. Historically, inventory comes from 3 sources. We come from existing home buyers or existing home sellers that are selling to move up or selling to move down, maybe move out of the state. Then the next one is home builders. So how many homes are being built by new construction, KB Homes, Lennar Homes? And then the last one is distressed home sellers, short sales, foreclosures, people getting sick, maybe losing their job, maybe inheriting a property that they can't afford. Those generally are what make up the market. What we have seen is with existing home sales, we're right now about a 3-month sitting unsold inventory market. It needs to be up closer to a 6-month unsold territory in order there to get out of the seller's market. Now, we're not in that extreme seller's market where people are giving up their contingencies and doing that toilet paper buying, the monkey buying that I just talked about, but we are seeing an increase in supply, which is neutralizing the market, which is what we need. We needed to stabilize this market. We couldn't keep going up by 20 and 30% year over year. It just is not healthy. Not enough homes for sale. So inventory really has been a huge driving force in the appreciation growth that we saw over 20 and 21. Mix that in with historically low interest rates, and that is what caused that overbidding frenzy. I call it the toilet paper buying or the monkey buying, where people are paying $100,000 to $150,000 over asking price. People putting things on the market the next day, even higher than that, and getting higher than that. So that is what really did it. What we can say is in a normal market, anything under a 3-month supply is a seller's market. So what we saw was the total housing inventory registered at the end of June was 1.26 million units. Unsold inventory sits about a 3-month supply at the current sales price. So we're still in a seller's market. Yes, it has softened. Yes, the terms are much better for buyers. There's a lot more competition and a lot more options for buyers, which is then making it so that we're not seeing these crazy overbids. And it went from about 6 offers to about 3 offers. But houses still are going over asking, just not as severe as what we saw over the last 2 years. When we look at the next thing of new builders, so this looks at 4 different graphs. It looks at the building permits, so where we're headed. So we can see we've actually seen a slowdown of building permits being pulled, and that's because new builders, they learned their lesson from 2008 and kind of saw when the market starts shifting, don't overbuild because you're actually going to hurt yourself. So they started pulling back. Some of it also does, the prices really haven't come down as far as building materials, and we're really unsure about how hard this recession is going to hit. Then housing starts, they started slowing that down as well. But we can see we've actually had an increase in the completed homes. So generally what we needed was 1.2 million homes put and built by builders. Over the last 13 years, 14 years, we've actually seen under a million, and sometimes it even got as low as 600, 400,000. So this was the first year of 2021 that we saw over a million homes being built and completed, which is actually a really good sign. It just is so far behind the mark that it's really been affecting the standing inventory. Lending standards. So why we're not seeing a huge increase in foreclosures and distressed sales is because in the buildup of 2004 to 2008, it was really easy to get a house. So this graph actually shows you that during the housing bubble, it was extremely easy to get a loan. I mean, there's stories of dogs getting, dead people getting. You could put in a mortgage application, not qualify, and then turn in the same application to the same lender and just state the income, and they were approving it. The lenders really learned it, or got a little slapping on the, on their bottoms by the government, and they really regulated and started bringing up the standards of loans. And it's actually become really, really hard to get a loan. A lot of times you need at least 20% down. You need to at least have a 700 FICO. And that is really what makes up today's homeowners. So even when rates rise, they're in 30-year fixes. So they're not being hurt by the rising interest rates for most home sellers. So a home seller might want to sell, but if they don't get their price, they'll probably not sell the home and keep it and wait for the next hot market. What we can actually see is foreclosure activity by year. So in that crash of 2007 to about 2011, we saw a huge spike in foreclosures. Okay, one, interest rates, and everyone was on these variable, rates where they're 2-year ARM, 3-year ARM, 5-year ARM. And when their rates went up, it really affected that homeowner that existed that day. So their payments went up by 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and most people couldn't afford that. And then the banks went and closed down their mortgage rates or the programs and made it really hard to refinance, which caused those huge influx. We had almost 10 million homes in that 3-year period go into foreclosure. Okay, what we've seen is a steady decline in foreclosure rates. Usually we said about 500,000 to 800,000 foreclosures, and you can see we've steadily headed down. 2018 we had 600, it went down to 2019, and that was really because we started seeing appreciation growth rising and interest rates lowering. So homeowners that were hurt were able to refinance, get a better rate, get a better mortgage payment, and be able to afford their houses easily, or they would sell their home and move into a lower priced area. Now, obviously, we can't really count to 2020 and 21 because we had a memorandum. You weren't even allowed to foreclose on people at that time. And they also really did a good job about creating that forbearance program. I think with the government and the mortgage lenders in particular, they got together and said, how can we make this work so we don't have another 2007, 2008 crash? So when we're looking at the first half of foreclosure activity year over year, and by the year, looking for that first 6 months, we can see there was a huge spike during that 2008, 2009, 2010. We can see, 2016, it started slowly declining, went down, and just year over year, decline. We can see even in 2022, when we're supposed to have this huge flood of foreclosures that the people that are causing for this housing crash, we're at 164,000. So we're extremely low. We're not even at 2019, which is pre-pandemic. Yes, is it going to rise? Yes, we have 2 years of foreclosures, built up, but is it going to really affect the market? Not unless it's into the millions, and no one sees that happening. And a lot of it has to do, again, like I said, that forbearance program. By coming up with this forbearance program, working with the homeowners and really allowing them an opportunity to save their home and save that equity, we see that 36.4% were paid in full. 45% has worked out a plan and a mitigation plan to either put it on the back end, lower their payments in the beginning, but we've seen a really healthy rate. So that's over 75% of people, or right around there, of homeowners that have actually come out of the forbearance program. Now, there is still about 18.4% that are still in trouble. 17.2 really haven't even reached out, whether maybe they're trying to work out some problems, maybe they just think that, whatever the case may be. And we're only seeing about 1.2% that are in foreclosure, that are deeds in lieu of foreclosure, short sales. And really what that means number by number, we're seeing about 400,000 homeowners that are either haven't got a plan or that are in foreclosure. So even if all 400,000 of them, which is very unlikely because a lot of them have at least 20% of equity, or at least enough equity to put their house on the market and get it sold, there's a low inventory, so it'll enable them to sell it before they actually go into foreclosure. So we'll really just have to watch on those and kind of see that. Might be a good time to look into the market and maybe see distressed sellers, look at NODs, look at probate, inherited properties. You might end up being able to catch a really good deal over this next 6 months. This is from Rick Sharga, an executive VP of Market Intelligence. Foreclosure activity across the United States continues its slow, steady climb back to pre-pandemic levels in the first half of 2022. While overall foreclosure activity is still running significantly below the historical average, the dramatic increase in foreclosure starts to suggest that we may be able to be back to normal levels by sometime between 2023. So getting back to a healthy market, and I know it sounds crazy that healthy market has foreclosures, but just historically, that is just the case, that we usually have right around 400 to 600,000 foreclosures every single year. Now we look at the months of inventory of homes for sale. So again, a neutral market is anything that's 6 months and above. If it's below 6 months, it's a seller's market. If it's above 6 months, it's a buyer's market. So right now we're hovering about 3 months. And some areas it's like 32 days to 54 days, but on average it's about 54 days from what we're seeing. So it's really not even up to that 3 month supply. Now you can look on the market, look at houses that have been sitting 90 plus days. And again, might be in a chance to get yourself a great deal. Also, looking at some big investors that own some homes, they might be looking to get a great deal because they just want to offload them. So what's ahead for the rest of 2022? Now, obviously, no one has this crystal ball. I say it all the time. But again, we're going to use real key indicators, real stats and facts, so that you guys can make that best educated decision so that you can do the best for you and your family. So when we look at mortgage rate projections, so this is Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, the Mortgage Banking Association, NAR, Association of Realtors. The average of all four see about a 5.33% interest rate come into that fourth quarter. So they're due to tick up. So again, one of the reasons why you might want to buy now, if prices are continuing to rise and mortgage rates rise, it's going to limit your purchasing power. We're going to come over the next year and they're calling actually for a decrease in mortgage rates. So again, marry the house, date the rate. There could be a potential silver lining for the market, he added, as stabilizing mortgage rates and rising inventory may bring some buyers back to the market during the second half of the year. I was quoting Joel Kahn, an economist from Mortgage Brokers Associations. So again, no one has that crystal ball. We did see a definitely halt when the rates went up from 3% all the way up to almost 6%. We started seeing a spike, a little bit of rise in buyer demand over this last month because rates actually fell below 5%. So it'll just be keep an eye on those interest rates. If you see something in the low fours, I would lock it. Do a 60-day rate lock. And that way, if you do find the right house and you do want to move forward, you have that rate no matter what happens. If the rate's lower, you just lock in a lower rate. So something to keep a lock on, and just have your mortgage professional send you rates every single day, maybe every single week, to keep you updated on what's going on with it. Home price forecast for 2022. So again, these are the major banks, major institutions in the housing, industry. And we're seeing about a call for a 10.3% appreciation growth. Now this is year over year. So again, from last August to this August, we saw about a 10.3% appreciation rate. And some, it was actually as high as 18%. but not as high as the 20 to 30%. So again, when you went from 220 miles per hour, that 32% appreciation growth that some of us saw in Southern California, and all of a sudden it slows down to 10.3, it's like you hit your brakes, but in all reality, you're still going 60 on the freeway. So we're still in a pretty normal market. The average appreciation year over year is about 4.5% to 5%. That's why real estate's one of the best investments you can make. So maybe the lowest one we saw was the Mortgage Banking Association seeing a 2.7%. And a lot of that is because their refi market has stalled out. So they got hit the hardest. So they're going to believe that the real estate market is going to get hit the hardest as well. Mark Zondi, the chief economist of Moody's Analytics, I don't think national housing prices will decline in a meaningful way, but there will be some price declines across the country. So what we're seeing is in those secondary markets, the vacation homes, the part where people have investment homes, we have seen a little bit of a slowdown and maybe even some price reductions and some decline in prices. Also, what I can say is in those high markets that were, started off very low and then the demand went through the roof, maybe like Florida or Arizona, maybe Utah or Oregon, we have started seeing some of those prices come down because, again, there was a lot of monkey buying, a lot of toilet paper buying going on. So they artificially drove up the prices higher than what they were actually at. So we might start seeing them come back down. Existing home sales. So this is from 2017 to about today. Again, in the rates of millions, we saw about 5.5 million sales, 5.3 million. The unicorn years, we saw 5.6 to 6.1, one of the highest and best years we've had. And now we're coming back down, and it's predicted that we're going to see about 5.1 homes, pending home sale transactions, which is kind of a normal market. So again, housing crashes, demand lower. Yes, it's lower than it was last 2 years because we had crazy interest rates or lower interest rates, but it's not down to where, it's going to cause this huge crash. When we look at total home sales forecast, so Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and the Mortgage Banking Association, we're seeing about, this is a reforecast. So they predicted a little higher in the beginning of the year, rates went up, and they're predicting a lower amount. Obviously, that kind of makes sense. So 3 reasons why it might be good to buy a home today. So there's fewer multiple offer scenarios. So when you put a house on the market, last year and the year before, you'd see maybe 15, 20 offers, on average about 5. To as we started closing or coming down through this year, we're starting to see those multiple offers starting to slow down. We're starting to see the overbidding starting to slow down. We're starting to see the month supply rise. So now buyers have more choices. There's less competition per home, and there's less overbidding, meaning that you can get a better deal today. And if you start looking at the best deal and just look at real estate as a financial investment, start looking at the homes that have been on the market for 90, 120, 180 days. Those are the ones that generally you're going to get the better deal on. No one has the crystal ball, but almost every major institution is calling for an increase in prices. And a lot has to do with just the low inventory and standing inventory that we're having. Mix that with still historically low interest rates, anywhere in the 4s and 5s, historically low. And there's a lot more money into the economy. So a lot of people have that extra cash or have that extra equity to pull out of their home to buy the second home, or a lot of equity to sell their home, go move, I have a client living in North Hollywood. They're selling their house probably for, $850, and they're going to go be able to buy a home that's 2 times bigger in a great area in Florida for about $550. We're starting to see, a lot of it has to do with, there's a lot of equity in people's home. There's a lot of cash in people, in this economy. So people are able to buy cash, or put a lot more money down, or take out equity to buy that other home, either a second home, or like people are doing in Southern California, they're selling their homes at a really high price, and they're moving out of state where they're able to buy twice as much home for hundreds of thousands of dollars less. So they're also driving up the prices, and will continue to drive up the prices. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. If you want me to do a market update for your neighborhood, kind of give you an analysis of what's going on, maybe to see if it's a good time to sell, if it's a good time to buy. Promise there's never any pressure on my side. I'm here to help, I'm here to answer questions, and I'm not trying to make my kids' college tuition on your one deal. I want to do what's right by my clients. I get 5-star reviews because I do what's right by my clients. I live my life like my 6 kids are watching over my shoulders. I want them to be proud of who their dad is. So again, if you find this useful, if you find any information or you have any questions, please reach out to me. Please like my page. Please subscribe. Please share this with anyone and everyone you possibly can to weed out the noise that we're getting out there. Thank you very much.